Ted Cruz is our guest. Ted, if we elect you, are we going to be hungry 30 minutes later?
You know what, Michael? People are hungry right now. They're hungry for leaders who've got a backbone, who will stand up and stop spending money. I mean, it really is ridiculous. I got to say, though, Michael, what you do, I think it's illegal in 22 states. It is. You speak the truth, and people aren't used to that.
Well, I am something of a truth sayer, Ted. You are correct. Now, let me ask you. I mean, I've been a candidate, and it wounds you. You know, the rest of us, we watch it as sport. But for a guy to stand up, and I know your family, I know your father, I know the story behind it. Your father fled Castro's Cuba. And, you know, people didn't want to have to do that, but they fled oppression, the likes of which I hope none of us have to witness. And you have devoted your life to that. And I've known you a lot of years, and I know a lot of people that I respected have known you for a lot of years. And a lot of people have come to like you over these years, not because of what you say, but because what you've done. Mark Levin and I have spent many an evening conversing about your stand on issues, your willingness, the mind you would bring to the U.S. Senate, and a lot of other people that I respect a lot of Tea Party folks in the state of Texas. And then David Dewhurst runs an ad desperately when he's behind in the polls here at the last minute saying you're basically bought and paid for by the Chinese government. On a personal level, I'd want to punch a guy in the nose. I want to ask you to respond to that. But what do you respond to these allegations by David Dewhurst? First of all, are you, as has been accused, are you a lawyer?
I am guilty on that charge.
You have
I
a
am
law
indeed
degree?
I am indeed a lawyer.
You have represented clients?
More than once.
You even represented the state of Texas before the Supreme Court when they told us we couldn't have the Ten Commandments out in front of a courthouse. Did you do that, Ted, as a lawyer?
I did, and I'll tell you, there's no thrill like standing before the Supreme Court of the United States and saying, I'm here representing the state of Texas.
But, Ted, let me get something straight out, because this whole lawyer thing, David Dewhurst has got you on this. I remember a case where some illegal aliens had raped and killed a girl, and the United Nations wanted to prevent the death penalty from being imposed on those illegal aliens, who were Hispanic, by the way, from Mexico. The United Nations wanted to impose the death penalty, wanted to prohibit the death penalty in the state of Texas because they weren't Texas citizens, even they broke in to get here, raped and killed those girls. You went to the United States Supreme Court and won that case. You didn't do that as one of those lawyers, did you?
I did, and I did it twice.
No.
I mean, it was, that case is the biggest fight of my career, and Texas stood up. We fought the World Court. We fought the United Nations. We fought 90 foreign nations, and we fought the President of the United States, and it was all about U.S. sovereignty.
But were you paid by the Chinese government in that capacity?
I was honored to be paid by the taxpayers of the citizens of the state of Texas.
Tell me honestly what your response is to David Dewhurst's desperate plea that somehow you're a Chinaman.
Look, it's complete and utter nonsense. The attacks, and he spent over $12 million on these attacks, all out of his vast personal fortune. They're filled with lies. There are a total of 11 lies he's had in this China attack. Let me tell you the biggest one. The man that he tells you is an American manufacturer, the man who he features in every single one of these ads, what he doesn't tell you is 20 years ago, he moved his entire factory to China. So this was never a lawsuit between a U.S. company and a Chinese company. This is a lawsuit between two Chinese tire factories, and it didn't impact even a single U.S. job. Dewhurst knows that, and he's deliberately deceiving the citizens of the state of Texas.
He says you were caught in a lie. Is that true?
Not only is it not true, but the little snippet he relies on is selective editing of the kind that would make MSNBC blush. Because what he's got is he's got me on a radio show where I acknowledge that I am listed as the counsel of record, which means the individual that receives the service in the case. But I continued to say, I didn't write the brief. I didn't argue the case. I've never appeared in any courtroom anywhere in this matter.
Ted Cruz is our guest.
They edited all that out.
Ted Cruz is our guest. Explain to people who may not know what it would mean to be the attorney of record and why your name would even appear on a document.
Well, I lead the appellate practice at a big law firm, and I was listed along with a couple of other lawyers as the attorney of record where we would receive the service from the other side. But again, I wasn't the lead lawyer on the case. I assisted in editing the brief was what my role was limited to. I neither wrote the brief nor argued the case. And I've never been in any courtroom anywhere in connection with this case.
So, to put this into perspective, for anyone who's criticizing you for being a lawyer and for bringing a case, are you telling me that you did what that evil Mark Levin does when he opposed Obamacare and helped write the brief against it so that we could undo Obamacare before the United States Supreme Court? You don't do evil things like that, do you?
Well, I'll tell you, anytime I'm doing something the great Mark Levin has done, I must be doing.
Ted?
Yeah.
Okay. So your appellate practice means bringing cases before the Supreme Court, just like opposing Obamacare.
That's exactly right. And in fact, you know, Dewhurst says this is my record on U.S. intellectual property. If you look to a case I did argue, I didn't argue this Chinese case, but I did argue a case last year in front of the U.S. Supreme Court where I represented a major manufacturer against a Chinese company, and the Chinese company had stolen a U.S. patent, and at my urging, the U.S. Supreme Court, by a vote of 8-1, upheld a $5 million verdict against the Chinese counterfeiter. Now, Dewhurst knows that, but he's deliberately not telling you that part of my record, and he's just trying to deceive people. He's trying to distract people from his own record because he knows that if people focus on his own record of compromising with Democrats and raising taxes and increasing spending, they're not going to send him in Washington to do the same thing there.
But he says that sometimes you eat with chopsticks and not a fork and knife.
Well, and I tell you, my two little girls were awfully surprised to discover that they were secretly Chinese.
Especially with their blonde hair, blue-eyed mama. Who would have known? Ted Cruz, keep up the good fight. And I think everybody out there, the Tea Party folks, you know, by the way, you got 30 seconds. One of the things that's bothered me is Dewhurst's refusal to debate you and the conditions on public appearances he has imposed. Tell us in about 20 seconds what he's done there.
Well, if he goes to any public appearance, he insists that he be in a different room from me. So we had a Tea Party forum in Sugar Land. He said we could not have any debate, could not have any interaction. He insisted I had to be out of the room while he was speaking, and he asked to receive all the questions beforehand because he's so afraid of the voters that he's unwilling to actually answer real questions or to defend his record. He doesn't want to debate.
What's the Chinese word for scared? Ted Cruz, thanks for being our guest. More Michael Berry Show coming up.
If you can't find your car keys, keep listening to Michael. He's bound to start something in the near future.
You in a heap of trouble.
The Michael Berry Show.